Point me to a single occasion when you have objected to gender separation in Orthodox Jewish religious practice in a public space. Because if you can't, why is the principle only activated when it's about Muslims?
It's not. I do not support, Lewis. I do not support the segregation of men and women in public spaces, whether that is Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, or Muslim.
They prayed separately.
That's
what Muslims do, just like Orthodox Jews do.
I don't like that personally.
Nigel Farage looked at Muslims praying in Trafalgar Square and called it an act of dominance over our capital city and our culture. Lewis Goodall then showed Robert Jenrick, Reform UK's deputy leader, a clip of a Hanukkah event in the same square and asked him whether that was also dominance. Jenrick said the Muslim event was different because men and women prayed separately. Goodall asked whether he had ever raised the same objection about Orthodox Jewish religious practice, which also separates men and women in prayer. Jenrick could not name a single time he had. Then a Reform MP made a joke about wearing a tartan Burka at the party conference, and Goodall asked Jenrick to explain what was funny about it. Jenrick never answered. Not once. This is Fool's Ballot. Subscribe if you are not already there. Now let us get into it.
But should people be angry at the way in which both of the two main parties have left our country on energy and on security in the weakest position in our lifetimes? Yes, absolutely. And that is the difference that a reform government would offer, a fundamental break from those failures.
Just on other matters. Your leader, Nigel Farage, said that what we saw with the group Muslim prayer in Trafalgar Square the other day was a group of people attempting dominance over our capital city and our culture. I'd just like you to watch this clip and tell me whether you think this counts as dominance. Just watch this.
Having Hanukkah on the square gives us an opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with our Jewish friends and colleagues and neighbours, and to show clear unity and a real sense of belonging between all of us, Jewish and non-Jewish, and show everyone that we stand solely against division, hatred and discrimination.
That's Debbie Weeks-Bernard, who's the Deputy Mayor for Communities and Social Justice, speaking about last December's Hanukkah event. Is that domination, Robert?
Well, firstly, I think the event that you saw in Trafalgar Square was different in character to some of the others that have been held for different religious denominations in recent times, because it was a segregated event. I find it astonishing that the Prime Minister and the Community Secretary are going around essentially calling everyone bigots and racists.
Can we just have a bit of context?
Let me finish my point, Lewis. For saying that a segregated event in one of our most important public spaces is wrong. That is anti-British.
Okay.
And I never want to see that happen again. The idea that women should be huddling at the back in Trafalgar Square whilst men take centre stage in our country is wrong.
Ramadan Tent Project has said that is a gross misinterpretation of the gathering and totally untrue. In their statement, they said the event was open to all, that there were no restrictions to anyone in the square. They added that representatives from the Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Sikh communities attended the event, and the feedback from attendees was overwhelmingly positive. Yes, women and men prayed separately. That's how they do it in mosques. Well, is your problem with Islamic standard religious practice?
Well, I don't like women being second-class citizens, no.
So you don't like it in Orthodox Jewish churches either, or synagogues?
Well, that's not the way that I conduct myself. If you,
well, no, obviously, you're not Jewish.
Obviously, people are free to practice their religion how they wish in our country, but should we be celebrating segregation? No, absolutely not. That is fundamentally anti-British.
It's not segregation.
Let me ask you a question.
Why is it segregation?
Because the men and women were in different parts of Trafalgar Square.
But if that
is a reflection on our country today, then that's a very dark place.
The women at that event chose to attend. They chose where to stand. Are you saying that British Muslim women can't be trusted to make their own decisions about how they practice their faith?
I think segregated events are not to be encouraged. I want men and women to be on an equal footing in our country.
Can you point me to a single occasion?
Absolutely. And let me make one point, Lewis. The organisers of this event, because you raised them, Ramadan Tent Project. Do you know who is the CEO of that?
Can you
Omar Salah. Let me just make this point because it's an important one. The man who is the chief executive of the organisation that held that event, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, pulled out of an iftar with him because he was a fanatic and was not prepared to be seen in public with him.
To a single occasion,
so
Robert Jenrick.
Do you think...
Can you point me... No, I'm asking the question.
Do you think we should have an event in Trafalgar Square?
I'm sure you could have your own GB News show where you ask the questions if you like, but coming on this one,
you're essentially defending
Can you point me to a single occasion when you have objected to gender separation in Orthodox Jewish religious practice in a public space? Because if you can't, Why is the principle only activated when it's about Muslims?
It's not. I do not support, Lewis. I do not support the segregation of men and women
So let's imagine,
in public spaces, whether that is Christian, Jewish, Hindu,
separately.
Sikh, or Muslim.
They prayed separately.
I do
That's
not.
what Muslims do, just like Orthodox Jews do.
I don't like that personally. I don't like that personally.
So is that a very British
it's
value?
Very different.
Is that a very British value? You talk about British values. Is it a very British value to tell people how to conduct their own religion?
We're all allowed our own opinions.
But you're saying the event, of course you are. But you're saying these events shouldn't take place.
My view is that a fundamental British value is that men and women live on equal footing in our country. And I don't think we should be encouraging, as you seem to be, events being held in our most important public spaces where men and women pray or stand or associate separately. I think that's wrong. You and I obviously disagree on this, Lewis.
No, I'm just
you
wondering why you
think that it's okay for there to be men telling women how to vote or women being stood somewhere else in a public space.
Robert Jenrick, are you telling me that if, say, an Orthodox Jewish event had taken place in Trafalgar Square, that Nigel Farage would have got up and complained about it this week and said it was an act of domination?
Really? I wouldn't encourage that. And also,
I
Lewis,
think you're misleading the listeners completely.
Let's look at the other facts here, Lewis. Number one, the event is organised by a fanatic who the Prime Minister will not be seen in public with.
What's he said that's fanatical?
He was associating himself with Cage, a group which has Islamist fanatical views.
And are you honestly saying that all of the people at that event would associate themselves with fanatical views?
We know the organiser did.
The vast majority of the people there, clearly, they weren't Islamists, were they? They were just Muslims praying.
Some may well be.
Oh, great. Well, we could say that about anyone. Can you get inside their heads? Is that the sort of country you want to live in, Robert Jenrick?
You think it's okay that the Prime Minister will not be seen in public with the organiser of an event who then goes on to hold one in Trafalgar Square?
I just wonder why
Lewis, that's a frankly ridiculous argument.
I just wonder why it is that you feel so comfortable in the name of British values telling people how to practice their religion. And again, I put it to you, would you tell Orthodox Jews that they should not practice their religion their way, i.e. men and women praying separately? Yes or no?
I do not want to see men and women being segregated in our country, irrespective of their religion. On the broader point, though, Lewis, we are a Christian country. I'm not ashamed to say that. Of course we're a Christian country. And so it's important that our big public spaces are not used by particular faiths in acts of domination. This is straight out of the Islamist playbook.
Your party,
that's what happened here. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Your party has a problem with Muslims, doesn't it?
We have a problem with Islamism in this country.
I'll tell you what, to add to a separate event.
We have to understand the context here. The context is that Islamism is on the rise. It's having
those people weren't Islamists, were they?
Well, the organiser was a fanatic.
Sadiq Khan was there.
The organiser was a fanatic.
Sadiq Khan was there. You think he's an Islamist?
I don't think Sadiq Khan is an Islamist, but he seems to be willing to associate with them because he sanctioned an event being held by an organisation called Ramadan Tent Project, which is run by somebody who the Prime Minister himself will not be seen in public with because of his abhorrent views.
Let's talk about your party and your relationship with Muslims. Just listen to this clip. This happened this week.
What about Muslims? He wants to ban them.
I've never, ever got involved in religious politics or racial politics in that sense at all.
And wouldn't?
And wouldn't, ever.
So that's Nigel Farage. That's a different clip. But Nigel Farage there saying that he never gets involved in religious politics. What's changed?
Well, what are you referring to? He just said he didn't want to get involved in religious politics.
Well, he used to say he would never get involved in religious politics, and now here he is telling a group of religious people that they can't pray in a public place. What changed?
No, he's saying very clearly that public spaces in this country are for everyone, and they shouldn't be used by particular groups to assert domination. That is a view that most people in our country would support.
Would you feel dominated if you were walking past?
I think many people would feel that threatening.
Basis?
Yes.
What, because someone was praying?
Because there's a broader context here.
But Robert Jenrick, there have been so many religious events.
My point.
I don't
for
understand.
1 minute.
Would they be dominating as well?
If you let me finish my point, you have to look at the broader context here. Islamism is on the rise. We've seen public spaces being used for years now, particularly since October the 7th, by Islamists to lionize prescribed groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, to lionize rockets being fired by the Houthis at British flagged vessels out
What's
at sea.
that got to do with people praying
because there's a
in
broader
Trafalgar
context.
Square, just ordinary British citizens like you and me exercising their rights
Omar Salah, who is a fanatical individual.
Would you accept that there will definitely have been ordinary Muslims there who would have no truck with those views? Well, therefore, then that's okay, isn't it?
You, Lewis,
but that's okay.
Have failed to respond to my question that the event was organised by someone who has fanatical views.
Sadiq Khan was leading that event.
And he should not have been there.
There were many ordinary Muslims
If I knew an event was being organised by a fanatic, I would not go to it, and I would disassociate myself with it.
Your party clearly has a problem with Muslims, as was evidenced by what Sarah Pochin said this week. Let's let the listeners just listen to this.
We have a problem with Islamist extremism.
Sarah Pochin.
You should too.
Sarah Pochin decided to make fun of the idea of just walking in, wearing a tartan burqa. Now, what's funny about that? What's the joke?
Look, Sarah will have to answer for herself, but she opposes women wearing the burqa.
She's an MP of your party.
I don't support women wearing the burqa.
Would it be very funny? Would it have been very funny? Well, let's just listen to it so the listeners can judge for themselves.
I wanted very much to come up and be part of this conference today. Oh, my auto cue's frozen. And do you know what? The funny thing is about my auto cue freezing is my Chief of Staff and David Ball will go into a complete panic because once I start to ad-lib, the press have a field day. So... We were talking about the reformed tartan then, weren't we, whilst I'm just waiting for my auto cue. And I really wanted to come on in a reformed tartan burqa, but it apparently I just wasn't allowed.
Less than 30 seconds before her script disappearing and her just off the cuff making a joke about Muslims.
She doesn't support women wearing the burqa. That's a legitimate view.
But what's funny about it? Explain the joke.
Many people do not support women wearing the burqa. They find it repressive.
But why make fun about? Why make fun of
in a
how Muslims
country
dress?
In which men and women live equally?
If a left-wing MP,
the funny thing is, Lewis,
if a left-wing MP,
you seem to be willing to make all manner of excuses for Islamism in this country.
Do you think that all women wearing burqas are Islamist?
No.
Well, there we are.
I don't like creeping Islamist practices.
If a left-wing MP or whatever just went up to a party conference and their auto cue disappeared and just joked, said, I wanted to dress up in Jewish Orthodox dress, would that be funny? Would you think that was funny?
I think it's a perfectly legitimate view to say that you don't like the burqa, particularly for a woman to be able to say that.
Would you think it funny, particularly in a week of a religious festival? In a week of a very important religious festival to millions of Muslims, our fellow citizens in this country, to have one of your MPs just off the cuff, just making a joke about how people in their communities dress. Why do it? Why do it?
Sarah Pochin has a long-standing view that she doesn't support the burqa.
Let us go through what actually happened in that interview, because the detail matters, and Lewis Goodall's technique here is worth understanding clearly, because it is one of the cleanest pieces of political interviewing you will see this year. Jenrick came in with a specific argument. The Muslim prayer gathering in Trafalgar Square was wrong because it was segregated, with men and women in different parts of the square, which he called anti-British. That is his stated principle. Men and women should be on equal footing in public spaces. Fine. That is a coherent position in isolation. The problem is what Goodall did next. He asked Jenrick whether he has ever raised the same objection about Orthodox Jewish religious practice, which also separates men and women in prayer and has done so in public spaces. Jenrick could not name a single instance. Not one. And that absence is not a minor point. It is the entire argument. Because if your principle is genuinely about gender equality in public spaces, it applies the same way, regardless of which faith is practicing. The fact that it has never been applied to Orthodox Jewish practice, while being applied loudly and repeatedly to Muslim practice, tells you that the principle is not really the point. The religion is. Goodall pressed this directly, and Jenrick kept saying he does not support segregation in any religion. But saying you do not support it is not the same as raising it as a political issue when it occurs. Farage did not make a speech about gender segregation in Orthodox Jewish spaces. He made a speech about Muslim prayer in Trafalgar Square. And the question of why the principle is only loudly activated when Muslims are involved is a question Jenrick genuinely could not answer. Because there is no honest answer that does not reveal the inconsistency. Then there is the factual dispute about the Trafalgar Square event itself, which deserves to be stated plainly. The Ramadan Tent Project, which organised the gathering, said the event was open to all, that no one was restricted from attending, that representatives from Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Hindu, and Sikh communities were present, and that feedback from attendees was overwhelmingly positive. Jenrick's framing of the event as women huddling at the back while men took center stage directly contradicts the organizers' account. And the detail Goodall added is important. Sadiq Khan was there. The idea that the mayor of London attended an Islamist act of dominance and nobody noticed at the time is not a serious proposition. The Burka joke is where the interview gets most revealing because Goodall asked the simplest possible question about it. What is funny? What is the joke? Jenrick never answered. Not once across multiple attempts. He defended Pochin's policy position that she opposes the burqa, which is a separate and legitimate debate, but he never explained what was funny about walking into a party conference and joking about wearing one during a week of important religious festivals for millions of British Muslim citizens. And Goodall's consistency test on this is the right one. If a left-wing MP's autocue broke and they improvised a joke about wanting to dress up in Orthodox Jewish clothing during a Jewish religious festival, would that be funny? Would Reform UK find that acceptable? The answer is obviously no. And the fact that the same standard does not apply in both directions is the whole story. Jenrick kept returning to Islamism as the context for everything. The organizer had links to extremism. The Prime Minister would not be seen with him. Islamism is on the rise. But Goodall pushed back on this correctly every time. The vast majority of people at that event were ordinary British Muslims exercising their right to gather and pray. The presence of an organizer with views that are legitimately contested does not make every attendee responsible for those views. And using the most extreme framing available to describe an entire community's religious practice is not a principled position on public space. It is a political choice about which communities get the benefit of the doubt and which do not. Reform UK has built its entire political identity on the idea that it speaks plain truths that other parties are too afraid to say. What this interview actually reveals is that its stated principles are applied inconsistently. Its objections to religious practice are selective, and when pressed to explain the specifics, including something as basic as what is funny about a joke, its deputy leader has no answer. That is not plain speaking. That is prejudice dressed up as principle. And there is a difference. This is Fool's Ballot. Hit the like button, drop your thoughts in the comments below, subscribe to the channel if you are not already there, and share this with someone who thinks Reform UK's concerns about public religious expression are applied equally. I will see you in the next one.